and welcome to another exciting episode of Can It Take K26, the show where we take a variety of blasters and see if they can be upgraded using a K26 spring. I am your host, Captain Xavier, and today we're going to be looking at some non-Nerf blasters, some weird Nerf blasters. I've been seeing them in Goodwills for a while, and I've always passed them up as being absurd, but then I had a thought about them. So we're going to take a look at them. The first one is this Ninja Turtle blaster thing. As you can see, it's vaguely meant to look like Raphael. It has two barrels and a priming handle, but it's got a fairly unique mechanism. I don't know that I've seen this kind of mechanism in any other blaster that I can think of. It doesn't have any kind of a catch. It's pull and release to fire, and what the trigger does is determine which barrel it is firing out of. So with the trigger not pressed, it fires from the top. When you pull the trigger, it'll now fire from the bottom. So you have to keep the trigger pulled when you pull and release to fire from the lower barrel, which is weird. I don't know why they would do that. Pull and release is obviously a simpler mechanism than having a catch, though then having that makes it more complicated. So I'm interested to see how that actually works. It's probably fairly simple to something like the Secret Shot, or the Sharpshooter 2, or things like that. But I want to see how it actually works. And then I want to see if it can take a K26, because right now the performance is fairly abysmal, but since it doesn't have a catch, you don't have to worry about whether the catch can support K26, and you don't have to worry about whether you can get enough compression. You pretty much just have to worry about whether the mechanism can handle it. So let's get this thing open and find out. Wow, that is actually a fairly substantial plunger tube. That is a good-sized plunger tube, but that is a super wussy spring. So let's see what we can't do about that. Plunger head comes off. That's nice. Not a particularly long spring either, but the amount of K26 we can get is decent. I'm going to make it about the same length as a stock spring to avoid spring rattle, of course. And annoyingly, the front barrel is glued. Well, it's not glued on, but it could be glued on. I'm not sure, but I don't want to try to remove it because I think it'll be a pain to try to put it back together. So we're going to try to get this back in without doing that. Alright! Well, K26 fit. Now to find out if I actually got the mechanism back in there right. I did. It's a bit of a beastly prime now. Oh, but it's got a heck of a lot more power. Neat. Well, I'm going to go fire a couple of darts and see how much it improved. Alright, well, it did in fact pretty much double the performance, which is neat. It's still, nearly impossible to aim because of the whole pull and release, which is why I didn't try to chronograph it, because trying to chronograph something that has pull and release is just not worth the effort. But it did definitely boost the performance quite a bit. I'm actually surprised at how well the barrel switch mechanism seals, even with this much power, so that was kind of neat. My thought concerning this was that you could rebarrel one of them in Elite, and then have basically something similar to the Dual Strike, except inferior in every possible way. Other than possibly you could actually switch between the two types faster. So for some reason you really needed to be able to switch between Elite and then to a Mega in a big old hurry because something had to be hit by Elites. Just pulling that switches it, whereas the Dual Strike you have to flip the switch. But definitely the fact that the Dual Strike, holds 3 of each kind and has a much larger, actually not a whole lot larger plunger tube. The plunger tube in this is fairly impressive. I imagine we're losing a lot of power in that link, though. That barrel switch mechanism probably is not the most efficient in the world. But it can take a K26 and it does beef it up, which means you could put any number of spring upgrades. This is a wussy spring. So just about any spring upgrade would work in this. So, I mean, you could scale it to whatever amount of power you wanted. I would probably not go with K26, just because it's a really heavy prime, and I'm mildly worried about this handle. You can already see it developing stress marks. The plastic is surprisingly good. That actually did kind of surprise me. It's much softer. It's not brittle. It's actually almost softer than Nerf plastic. So that was interesting. But let's move on to the next contestant. Our next contestant is a Leonardo Revolver version of the same Ninja Turtle thing. Again, pull and release. Now what the trigger does is rotates the barrel, which is interesting. It holds 4 cylinders, and I originally got it to make a 4-round mega absolver, which is probably what I will still end up doing with it. But first, we need to see if this thing can take a K26, because science. Alright. This one also appears to have a fairly large plunger tube. Same, well, it's a slightly longer, but still wussy spring. Different plunger head design, but it still screws off. But the plunger does, or the spring does compress down into it. Which means we may lose some with the K26, depending on, yeah. Now, because it doesn't have to actually catch, that's not going to actually hamper anything, but we won't get quite as much compression. We won't be able to get as much spring in without running into compression issues as we could otherwise, but we're going to run with it. Yep, he'll take it. Let's go see if it was an improvement. Success! Again. So once again, yep, it can take a K26, and it does improve the range considerably. Still, you know, you'd never be able to hit the broadside of a barn, but you might be able to hit, you know, a shield at close range, at which point the added power really isn't all that helpful. But it can indeed take a K26, so again, it could take any number of spring upgrades if you wanted to do that. And again, you could either just use it as a revolver, or you could rebarrel some of them in order to allow you to switch between other missile types or other ammo types easily. It might be able to fire rifle if you took the posts out, but I don't know for sure. The revolver probably less so. The pistol, the single or the dual shot one probably. But with this, you're gonna lose pressure at the piston gap, especially since it's considerably less of a stout connection. But yeah, they can take K26. So if you see these at Goodwill, they are an inexpensive way to get a decent mega blaster, really. So there you have it. Let's recap. All right, for those of you just tuning in or who just skipped to the end to see the results, that was a yes for this Ninja Turtle thing. And that was a yes for this Ninja Turtle thing. Since both of them are don't have catches, they're just pull and release. K26 isn't you don't have to worry about it catching, you don't have to worry about getting enough compression, you just have to worry about whether it will fit. And it fits just fine around the plunger rod, and the plunger tubes are actually remarkably large in these. The triggers have some kind of feature. This one rotates the barrel. This one just switches between them, whether you have it pulled or not. So, yeah, you get a surprising amount of power for a Mega Blaster. The downside is, of course, since they're pull and release, it's very hard to aim with them, but if you're using them to bust shields or take out a tank or something. So, yes, they will take a K26. Do with this information as you will. If you have any suggestions, requests, ideas for future episodes, yes, when the new stuff starts coming out, I will, of course, try to get my hands on it and do those ones. If there's any weird, esoteric ones that you're wishing to see, or just ones that I have somehow missed, the Walking Dead series is one that people have considered, and I really should check Toys R Us and see if they have any of them left before they go completely out of business. But, yeah, those are on the list somewhere. If you have any other suggestions, comments, concerns, requests, go ahead and put them in the comment section. And as always, thank you guys for watching.